So, this is Alaska, a part of Russian America. Russians didn't have any huge problems with discovering of this ice cap because it's just Siberia number 2, which is divided by Bering Strait from the mainland Russia. If you think that Russian Empire was really interested in Alaska, no, not at all. Even before selling Alaska to the United States, there were only 7,000 inhabitants, and less than 1,000 of them were Russians. They had way bigger plans than colonizing a useless piece of ice. This is Russian Empire right before selling Alaska. At first sight, everything is fine, but on the second sight, not at all. Yeah, they had a lot of lands, a big population, but they didn't have a normal access to the world ocean. Mediterranean Sea was blocked by the Ottomans. Denmark blocked access from the Finnish Gulf, and Arctic Ocean is just freezed 24/7. And because of that, Russians didn't have any naval bases in warm and non-frozen waters, which have access to the world ocean. The only option which they had was Pacific Ocean and opportunities to colonize it. By late 18th century, South and Central America were already colonized by Spain. But situation with North America was different. Main goal of Russian Empire was to colonize the west coast of nowadays Canada and the United States. So the whole north of Pacific Ocean is gonna be controlled by them. But before we continue, please put like on that video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Russian America consisted not only of Alaska. Here is Russian California. Well, they had only one settlement there, Fort Ross, and it existed only for 30 years, until 1841, when it was sold to Americans. But nevertheless, it was a real piece of Russia in America. Same buildings, same architecture. Gosh, everything looks like that no one has ever left Russia anywhere. While the United States oppressed Native Americans and forced them into reservations, Russians were living together with them. Moreover, in Fort Ross they lived together with red-skinned Native Americans and Aleuts. Russians were a minority here, as well as in Alaska. Seriously, even when Russians colonized Alaska, they became good friends with the local tribes and lived together with them. Of course, not without problems, but they weren't serious. Another colony was Fort Elizabeth, which locates on Hawaii. Right, before annexation of Hawaii by the United States, Russians tried to colonize it too. In 1816 they landed on one of the islands and created there a fort. If Hawaii became a Russian colony, that would rapidly raise positions of Russia in the Pacific Ocean, and they would become one of the main players in the region. But in 1817, under the pressure of local citizens and their king, plus because of the United States, they left this fort and forgot about the idea of colonization of Hawaii. As time went on, it became obvious that Russian expansion to the Pacific Ocean and New World has failed. The only land which has left with them was Alaska. But don't forget about the British Empire, who was an enemy of the Russian Empire. They fought against them in Crimean War from 1853 till 1856. After British victory in this war, Russian government was scared that one day Britain will just annex Alaska and Russians will do nothing with that, because it's just too far away from everything. Distance between Moscow and Alaska is almost 8,000 kilometers, and you can't normally supply a piece of ice through the Pacific Ocean. So war in Alaska would be a bad idea for Russians. If you have liquid assets, what should you do? Right, sell them. Sell Alaska to the Britain is an admission of defeat, so we can sell it to everyone else except Tilauer. Plus, Russian Emperor Alexander II still needed to pay war reparations, so money would be more useful than colony that only eats your budget every single year. There were two main candidates for selling Alaska: the United States of America and Liechtenstein. Exactly. This tiny country, which you can't even find on the map of Europe. Selling Alaska to Liechtenstein wasn't a bad idea at all. House of Romanov and House of Liechtenstein had a great relationships between their families. Plus, Liechtenstein was under protection of Austrian Empire, so conflict between Liechtenstein and British Empire would also involve not only Russian Empire, but Austrian Empire too. Liechtenstein would be seen as Switzerland in North America, but House of Liechtenstein denied this suggestion. They had enough money to purchase Alaska, but they didn't make it. Their family, to say the least, wasn't poor. But maybe it's for the best that they didn't buy it, cause living a calm life in Europe is way better than having a troubled geopolitical life owning a piece of ice, which is 100,000 times larger than you. At the same time, United States started to expand on the West, and they had a good relationships with the Russian government. Having Alaska, America could also threat Canadian positions in British Columbia, so they couldn't find the best customers than United States. Everson told Alexander II that Alaska should be sold to the United States, so Russia can focus on liberation of Balkans and Caucasus. On 30th of March 1867, a treaty of selling Alaska was signed in Washington. On 3rd of May 1867, it was ratified by Emperor Alexander II. Did anyone regret about selling it? No. In 1860s, Russia had way bigger problems than Alaska, and citizens of Russia wanted to reform empire, rather than think about territorial expansion. Well, of course, except warm waters of Constantinople. No one could forget about them. Every year, on 18th of October, people in the United States celebrate official transfer of Alaska to the United States. But for Russians, treaty was signed only on 19th of October. Just imagine that two parts of your country lives in two different dates because of the time zones. The difference between time on Russian Far East, Kamchatka for example, and Alaska is almost 20 hours, despite fact that they locate pretty close to each other. And difference in time between Moscow and Alaska is only 13 hours. That's how time zones work. I guess I need to make a separate video about them.